let's take a look at floor systems. This house here is just kind of the common floor plan that you'll see around here. If you notice at the bottom, there's this red section, and that's actually a concrete block that's been painted red. But sitting right on top of it, through this section here, is a floor system. And it literally holds all the weight of the house and then transfers it down to this foundation. Now let's take a closer look at actual members of a floor system. We've got two basic types of members. We have joist and girders. The joist go from span to span, and most all the common pieces, even on the outside, all these are called joists. This one, right down the middle here, would be our girder. So only have a single girder in this situation. Most of the time, on most heavy houses, this is just a little deck. There'll be 3 actual boards that are laminated together. Now, there are more options. You can have beams that are solid wood. You can have engineered beams and a couple other things. But most of the time, you find 3 pieces of dimensional lumber that are nailed together to make the girder. A couple other points of interest right here. We've got, these are called common joists, and they span from the outside wall to the inside piece here, and there's nothing underneath them. And this is called the span, the distance that's nothing's underneath it from one point of contact to another point of contact. That is the span. So these are all common joists running throughout. There's nothing short on them. You get to these little ones right here that are these cut little blocks. These are called cripple joists because they're shorter than the entire length and the common length of the thing. So those are called cripple joists. Out here on the outside, this one, you get a better color, this one here is called the header joist. You know it's the header because the common joist runs into it like the top or the head of the building or the top of a person. This makes this the header joist. And then over here on the side that runs parallel to the common joist, this is called a rim joist. Now, most of the time these are doubled up. You'll have 2 boards sandwiched in there. They didn't do it in this case because we have these actual cripples that come in here and cover that space. Here's another look at a foundation. You see the foundation, you see the vents. And now we're starting to build the actual floor system itself. This is on a common house. These are wood trusses, wood floor trusses that span, and they actually become the common joist. Here in the middle, right in here, is our girder. It's supporting the weight. On the outside here, under the joist, we can start building. So we're going to start, we have our foundation wall, and immediately on top of it, there's a piece of metal. Now, we use this in the South a lot. It's called a termite shield, because termites will literally come up out of the ground and they'll build little dirt tunnels with spit and dirt, and they'll make a little mud tunnel, and they'll come and they'll hit that shield, and when they crawl to the outside, then they just fall right back down to the ground. So we use it to keep termites from getting in the house. 2 things are the enemy of the house. It's weather and termites. So, foundation, termite shield is a metal layer. Then you have your first member here laid down of the floor system. This is called the sill, S-I-L-L, and it's normally 2x8 dimensional lumber. And that's a recent upgrade. Up until recently, we've always used 2x6s, but we changed over to use a 2x8, and the reason we do, it is the same size as this concrete block it is sitting on, which is actually 8 inches, roughly, in nominal width across, so that they match each other, so that this 2x8 is the same distance across as that concrete block, or CMU. So if you look right here, we'll zoom in on this another picture. This is an anchor bolt. It literally is a bolt that's shaped just like this. It runs down and it's in that concrete block. They're called J-bolts. And you put concrete in the top of the block and you stick the little bolt in it and you let it dry, and then you come back, and when you lay this sill, you actually drill a hole through the sill, and then you put a nut and washer on top of it. Here's a closer look at anchor bolts. If you see this one here in the top right, you see this is the top of, this is actually a foam form that's been backfilled, but you can see they've laid an anchor bolt, and what you don't see is the piece that goes down in the concrete, and it goes down about 8 or 10 inches, and it makes a little J shape, and then it holds in the concrete, and then it leaves some thread sticking up. And when you get ready, you'll come like they did here. You can see we have a sill right here, and then they drilled a hole, laid this big flat washer so that you can make some adjustment, because you'll have more pieces to add to it. You don't want things exact, because you know that you're going to have to stand a wall up on top of this. You've got the floor and then the wall. You got to leave some room for other members to meet. And then they literally just take a nut, a bolt, and a wrench and tighten it down. And you run these within every 36 inches at a minimum, plus 2 in the corner. And this is literally what holds the house down to the foundation, so that when the tornado comes, it won't pick it up in movement. I have literally seen houses pick up and move over 10 or 12 inches and set down. You look at the house, nothing looks wrong until you look at the foundation. It is literally moved. When you hear something moving on foundation, that's what it is. A little bit closer look here at the termite shield. You see our concrete foundation wall comes up, and you see this metal that's under the sill on top of the foundation, and then it's bent over, and then it has a little lip here that actually flares out all the way down. So literally the termites crawl up, they run into that metal, they start climbing down, and then they go, "Oh no, Mr. Bill," and then they fall all the way back down to the ground and can't get up to the wood. This top piece here is also made out of treated lumber, which is very, very important. It is resistant to weather and resistant to bugs. Everything on top of it's not treated because of expense, because it's extremely expensive, about 3 times as much to use a piece of treated lumber. So that is why we use treated and why we have termite shield. We're protecting against 2 things: against weather and against bugs. All right, here's another little foundation. Let's talk about span a little clearer. These are actually wood I-beams that span from one point to the next point. And this looks like it's just a little overhanging garage that's going to be built on a house. And so they've got wood I-beams, and the distance from one contact point to the other contact point is called the span. S-P-A-N. A span. And it's literally that distance. Now, engineers have to do some math to figure out how the size this beam has to be, or this common joist has to be, to go from point A to point B to carry all the weight that's going to be above it. You have dead weight and you have live weight. Dead weight is just the permanent parts of the building. The building, the floor, the walls, the carpet, the furniture, all that kind of stuff. The live weight adds in the people, the fixtures, your pictures, all that kind of stuff, anything that you would add to the room after the basic structure, and that becomes a live weight. But it is all weight pushing down on his floor, and then the floor joist literally transfers that weight over into this foundation. All right, if we back to beams or girders, both are called the same thing. Remember, here's our girder. This is actually a piece of engineered lumber. It's called an LVL, laminated veneer lumber. It's literally pieces of plywood that are glued together, but it's the same thickness as dimensional lumber. This here is probably close to 4 inches thick across there, which makes it crazy strong. You've got a little board here. You see sometimes it's called a ledger board. It's where the common joist comes, and they literally cut a little notch right there and then set it on top of it. It just makes it way easier to nail these things together. So we've got our girder runs across, but out here in the middle of this floor system, we have a pier. It is this concrete block. What you're not seeing under the ground, this block is 16 inches wide and it's 8 inches deep, but you've got another foot all the way around this thing where there's concrete under the ground, under this gravel, that holds this pier in place. But again, we're looking and thinking about weight. We've got all the live weight of the building coming down on this floor, and even in places where there's nothing touching to the ground. So I've got to take this weight, transfer it over here to where it goes into that block, which then takes it into the ground. Everything is all about transferring weight and making things stronger. And back to our original floor system that we saw here, we have our foundation that runs around, and the floor system literally sits on top of it. We have our header joist, our rim joist, our common joist, our short little cripples, and we have one I forgot to mention earlier. We have a double joist where it has 2 of them that are put together, and then we have our beam or girder that spans down the middle. All right, one more highlight: bridging. Sometimes the span is so great from contact point to contact point that we need additional weight to try to support the floor system. Two styles. We have the old style called cross bridging, and it literally looks like an X. You take 1x4s and cut them on a little angle, and you put two little nails, and you come from the bottom and nail it all the way back and forth. Literally what it does is it takes the weight that is pushing down on one board in this one specific area, and it transfers over to that board, which transfers over to this board, which transfers to the foundation. And it keeps the middle from sagging. If you ever seen a board that's got a lot of weight on it, it won't stay straight for long. It will actually start sagging like that. So we use cross bridging, and another one that's more common nowadays is actually blocking. And it's probably by far the easiest thing to do. This blocking material is just the scraps that were left over from the common joist or building my girders or building cutting any of my other joists. I save my scraps, cut them to length, put them inside, put 3 little nails down one side, 3 little nails down the other side, and that holds it, and it still transfers the weight from one joist to the next joist. Here's the underside look. We've got a foundation wall on the outside. This little area right here, where this girder is sticking in, is called a girder pocket. This is literally a hole in the wall that this girder sticks out on the concrete, and it's got to have enough room to get at least 3 inches going out onto the concrete and at least 4 inches wide. So those are called girder pockets. Another thing to note here is you notice this girder's built up, and they've got bolts that they ran through it to support it. That's a built-up girder. And then one more thing, we have what's called joist hangers. We use these commonly, especially when you're working on second stories, third stories, things like that. And literally, it's a metal bracket in the shape of a U. It's got nails that go down either side. You nail it to the girder, and then your common joist slides into it. And then all you're doing is nailing from the side into the common joist. Literally a series of nails. If it's got a hole, you put a nail in it. And these are actually double. If you look close, you'll see these are 2 common joists in each one of these packets. Looks like this floor system is designed to hold a lot of weight, because this built-up girder is pretty good size too. So that's floor systems. A lot of the highlights to it. Thank you.